gets harder as time goes on. And so it's just fascinating. But it does, so it's got both this translucence that's very similar to the watercolor, but as you add to it, it gets thicker and you can play with it more. So that's the kind of work that I'm doing. But also, again, I just say that it's this continuing conversation, and I don't know if I'll stay with this forever, but this is where I am right now. It's where the conversation is. I will tell you, I almost threw this thing away several times because it wasn't speaking to me. Joanne said, "I think you weren't listening." And so I just kept living with it, and I'd walk away and come back, and so here it is. And so I've got another piece that's waiting, and I've had it up there, and I've been kind of thinking, and it's going to be a piece from Northwest Texas, landscape. And so I'm beginning just to think about that and waiting for my time to begin to work on it. So that's where we are. That's what's going on. What I would say to all of you here is that all of you are artists. Think, I'm not an artist, there's no way. But you are. Art itself is the incarnation beckoning us to live a beautiful life. Art is a sacrament of grace which invites our souls to be in conversation. That when we move away from it into the world, we may see around us all that is, and all that we have, and all that we know, or we come to meet as beautiful. You may not draw, you may not write, you may not journal, you may not do poetry, but when you feed the hungry, you make art. When you clothe the naked, you make art. When you show kindness to one another and to those whom you do not know, you make art. It is part of who we are to make the world a more beautiful place, to restore it to its original beauty, to reflect the beauty that is God through God's Spirit with a pneumaesthetic appreciation for life and the living of life. So, questions? What do you want to know about? What did this make you think of? What do you want to talk about?
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, that's the point. Please, ask the question.
Listen deep or profound, but when you were describing separating the egg and making an egg, and you said you mix the pigment, you drain it and you mix the pigment.
Yeah.
Do you mix the pigment with the part that drains out? Or
Yes, thank you. You take the stuff that's in the egg, which is the stuff that's bad for you. It's the cholesterol part, which is an oil, right? So you're taking that very basic oil that is natural in the world, and you take that and you put it in a little jar, a little bottle, a little squeeze bottle, almost like an eyedropper, because you don't need very much. And you add the same amount of water to it. And then you take it and you put the pigment, and you mix your color first, whatever color you have, kind of basic color. So you mix the color you're trying to achieve, and you add to it the yolk and water mixture. And that creates the pigment.
all of those phrases that you just said in summation, have you got them all written out?
No, but I just recorded it, so you can. She's got it there on video, but you also be able to go to my podcast site or or to the diocesan website and says connect with the bishop, and you can find links that'll take you to the podcast. And so you can go there and you can listen to it again. And sometimes they get transcribed, but not very often.
In this that you've shown, that you have on display, now how does the pigment, some of it is smooth and some of it is in clumps. It almost looks like mosaic, like stone. And is that your goal?
Yes. The pieces, the thing I love about this egg tempera is that I can build it up. So it has a dimension to it that watercolor does not. Watercolor really binds itself with each other, and so it's all flat. And the egg tempera, though you have to be careful, because if it's too thick, it will crack, just like a poorly mixed oil paint will. You can build up some substance to it.
So if I felt that, I could feel depth.
You would feel bumps. That's
So
right.
You
would
see,
feel,
I see depth.
right. Yeah, and there's, if you go up in a minute, you all come look at it, but you'll see that there's places where I've scraped it and played with it. So I've actually lifted paint off as well as added paint on, and so it's very much a movement through the different thin dimensions of the two-dimensional piece.
Does that have a top?
No, not yet. Yeah, I mean, all of mine right now have place titles. So it'll be, I'll go and look and see where the picture was taken, and then I'll get the county and the place. And I like that because even the ones that are more abstract than this, it tells you that this exists somewhere. And so I find that even the title is a piece of dialogue. There's this wonderful wispy tree, a watercolor that I did, and it's a piece from Chapel Hill. And I was fascinated. We had some folks over, and a person came up to me and said, "I love that painting of the tree from Chapel Hill. They all look just like that." And I thought, I never saw them look like that. I thought that was just kind of what was happening as I was painting, right? It was me. It was this movement from what is real through the conversation to create something new that is real. But remember the symbol that points back to itself, that you can think of the way Tillich talked about that it's always pointing to something. And it captured for this person exactly what he had always imagined. You know, that wonderful question the artist always wants to know. Did Van Gogh see the world that way? And the truth is, the longer I'm in this, the answer is yes. But the scene is not like we think of seeing in our time. Yes?
How many man hours in front of the canvas does something like this take? And when you're about to finish, what's your emotion?
It depends how many man hours does something like this take, and what is my feeling when it's done. It depends. This one, this one took an enormous amount of time. But that's because I was playing with some new stuff and I think it was just trying to get used to, it's like a foreign language. Learning how it does. You kind of figure out, well, I didn't want it to look like, that's not at all what that just told me to do. And so I think that it took, this one probably was about 48 hours of work. 48 hours of work, but that includes sitting there and looking at it and talking to it. Engaging it, listening. Sometimes I'm glad when they're done. Sometimes I miss them. What I do is they sit. So before they leave to go hang somewhere or to be given away, they sit. This one sat for 2 months on the easel before I let it go. It now hangs in the guest room. But that's a temporary place because it'll probably be given away for auction once the next one is finished. But there is that, and there is also the ones that you think, I'm never going to give that one away. And it's kind of the way that is. So I think, it's just like anything. And it's just like children. That moment, for those of you who've experienced the empty nest, you go, yeah, right, you give them, well, there are days when you want to do that too. That you think about, I can't wait for you to go to college, I can't wait for you to go to college, and then that experience that so many parents talk about, how they pull into their driveway and they sit there and they weep. Their whole life with the child has been to have this successful launch to go away. And yet that tug, and so it's the same in art, I find. And there's a, and there's a connection to that too, I would say, for the artists, for those pieces that truly transcend time and space in this way, for the most beautiful pieces. You're not looking at the art as an object. You all see that, and now you have a sense of what I've been talking about and doing, and you can see it. So you're going to look at that, and if you see that again, you'll think about me. And I would say that I think that's true about when artists capture that beauty in some way. When we look back in time. I would stand for hours in galleries and imagine that brushstroke by that artist. It is there, and that's what when you go to look, you take in our culture. We see this. Stay for a minute. Look at how the brushstroke goes down and then a flick up. Look at where they took a knife and they scraped it. This is that conversation. I'm reading The Streets of Laredo, the last of the McMurtry series of Lonesome Dove. And there's a character in there who is a guide, and he walks everywhere. And he reads tracts. But he can't read books, and so he wants to learn how to read the tracts of the book. And so what I would encourage you to do is next time you go and stand in front of a piece of art that you find captivating, look for the tracts and wonder what the language is beneath them. Now you had a question, and then back there.
Okay, my question is, do you see and find art in design of utilitarian things, such as furniture?
Oh, yes. Yes. The arts and crafts movement, which is really the high point of American craftsmanship in many, many regards. And that means that we don't have fine things today. But it wasn't, that craftsmanship is incredible. And for me, it points to something else. And so yes. There's that story of the cathedral, National Cathedral sculptor who, for years they were finishing all of the gargoyles and, at the very top, they're angels all around the edge of the building. And each one of them is different. And a person walked up, the story goes, it's actually on a little plaque there at the National Cathedral, story goes, that somebody walked up and asked the master